I stopped the pill and didn't get my period back for just under 2 years. I was considered normal weight, normal BMI, and my bloods were normal too. So, how did I get my period back and get pregnant? Hi, I'm Tash at Wholeheartedly Tash, and on this channel we talk about hypothalamic amenorrhea mainly as a reason for your missing period, but also women's health and hormones in general. After not having my period for nearly 2 years, considering I was normal weight, normal blood work, why was I not getting my period back? It took some discovery to realise I had a condition called hypothalamic amenorrhea. This is when the hypothalamus in your brain, which is the control centre that regulates a lot of things like your hormones, your metabolism, your hunger cues, lots of things like that. That's where the hypothalamus stops talking to your ovaries, the communication shuts down in a bid to conserve energy. At first, when I heard the term hypothalamic amenorrhea, I thought that can't be me. I was very dubious of it. I wasn't an athlete. I was working out a little bit here and there. I didn't have an eating disorder, or I like to eat healthily and was quite health conscious and into my nutrition, etc. And also with the mental stress, I felt like, I was a bit of a stress head, but who isn't? So I was very dubious, but I had to take a step back and realise that lots of different factors can affect this, and you don't have to be severely in one camp. I'm going to be letting you know all the different things that I did as a combination that helped me get my period back and eventually get pregnant later down the line. So the first thing I did was I started to increase my food intake, and that also looked like increasing how many healthy fats I was eating and carbs. Healthy fats are really important. As I mentioned before, they are the building blocks of hormone production. So when we are having a low fat diet, we often see that we're not ovulating and the body just doesn't have that energy because it is the building blocks of hormone production. Healthy fats can look like eggs, salmon, flaxseed, avocado, olive oil, nuts and nut butter. So I was just eating all of these array of food every single day. I also had to look at my exercise. So I was working out originally about 3 to 4 times a week with the odd HIIT class here and there. And when I say working out, I was doing weights. So I was weight training. I reduced that down and realized that that wasn't really doing enough for me. I still wasn't getting my period back. So I had to cut it out completely. Now I've had clients that can reduce their exercise load and still get their period back as long as they're fueling, working on their mental stress. And I've had clients that have had to also, like I did, had to cut it out completely. It is up to you how you feel and how your body approaches and deals with the recovery process. Genetics can play a role, how sensitive you are, how quickly you want your period back, all these different things. So when I cut out exercise, I just went to walking my little dogs and doing some yoga as well, which is obviously great for restorative movement and helping with my mental health too. The thing with exercise is it's releasing circulating cortisol. There's also the rest and recovery period that you need to consider, along with the energy expenditure while you're actually doing that movement and after. So when we have got HA and our body is feeling stressed out and there's not enough energy to ovulate and to have a period, obviously we want to be reducing our movement as one of the key foundations. I also really try to prioritize self-care and stress management. Now, cortisol really affects our hormones so much, our sex hormones, because basically cortisol affects FSH and LH and then has a knock-on effect with our sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. Cortisol actually binds to our progesterone receptors, meaning that our own progesterone can't get into its own molecules. So self-care and stress management for me at that time looked like meditation, slow mornings, yoga and breathwork really helped me too. Another concept that really helped me towards period recovery and eventually getting pregnant is to cut out caffeine. So I went to decaf and I really noticed the difference when I started to tweak and play around with that once I got my period back and started adding in normal caffeinated beverages like coffee, and my ovulation started running away from me. I was a bit too sensitive and I felt like jittery from it. Now caffeine can affect the absorptions of lots of different minerals and magnesium being one of them, which is really important for a healthy menstrual cycle. It can disrupt your sleep, your cortisol levels, and your blood sugar levels too. So it is a really good idea to cut down, reduce, or completely eliminate coffee and other caffeinated beverages while you're trying to get your period back and get pregnant. The next thing I did that really contributed to my period recovery was to challenge food fears and any habits that I had. Yeah, we can get our period back, we can be physically recovered, but we need to be mentally recovered so that we don't fall back into the old traps and basically lose our period a few months down the line again. So some of the restrictions that I had that I didn't even know that I had until I took a step back and other people were telling me and I was talking to them about it was I wouldn't let people cook for me. I felt very anxious about other people cooking for me, and I also felt anxious around sauces. I also wouldn't eat after 8 p.m. I had little rules around that, and also bread for some weird reason. I would only have one kind of bread-like thing in that day. Say I wouldn't have a sandwich, then go home and have a wrap or fajitas. I had to stick to one bread thing a day. There's lots of other restrictive behaviors that I was doing that I did not realize until I took a step back, and I really needed to conquer and face and overcome and keep on challenging them time and time again in order to get my period back. So the main thing I did was to start to honor the mental hunger and physical hunger completely and entirely. I wouldn't feel guilty, and I wouldn't allow myself to feel guilty if I was eating, even if I just ate a minute ago, because I'm just really trying to honor all types of my hunger and knowing that each step I'm just getting closer to recovery. Another big contributor towards period recovery was filling my feed, my social media feed, with positive accounts. So it's really important to be aware of how accounts make you feel, how after you've been scrolling for a little while, how that makes you feel, how that impacts your day, and maybe your thought patterns around food and movement. This is actually the reason why I started off my business account, just generally trying to connect with people in the same boat at the start, and then it progressed and developed into what it is now. And I also say this to clients to really think about what they're consuming, because it makes such a big difference and impacts how we feel and think. Even if you don't feel like it does, it will go into your brain and imprint in some way, shape or form. So even things like watching Love Island, for instance, that can make people really change how they feel about their body or want to eat, and it's just not in a great way. You can be very judgmental from yourself after coming away from them kind of TV shows. So just be really mindful, especially during recovery, what you are consuming. Another huge factor in recovering my period and eventually getting pregnant is I ditched calorie counting. So I got rid of the app and I wasn't calorie counting, and that just made me feel so much more refreshed and my mind was so much more free. So I was really honoring the body cues that I had rather than these numbers I kept having to add up. I also reminded myself daily, weekly, all the time how important period recovery is and why I was doing it. So to protect my bones, for my heart health, for my libido, even for like my relationship, for my hair, for my nails, for my fertility. At that time, I didn't want a child. That wasn't my main goal. But these are all different aspects that you have to just try and think, what is my main why and what is keeping me doing this every day? When it gets hard, when the clothes don't fit, when I feel like I'm losing my identity, when I'm bored, sitting here bored when I could be going out and going on a walk or working out. All these things, you have to be grounded and find your center and your main why. And the last big contributor that helped me get my period back and moved me along the way was to buy comfortable clothing, which I've had clients that get so frustrated because every few weeks it feels like they're buying new clothes. And I know that can feel really annoying, but it's so important, because if you're wearing clothes that you feel comfortable in, you're going to probably have less bad body image days and you're just going to feel comfortable. Basically, there's nothing else more to say. And during even pregnancy, if you want to get pregnant, you are buying new clothes, or I had to buy so many new clothes because your body's constantly changing and you just want to feel comfortable and the best you can feel. So I got my period back finally, and fast forward a few years, I actually became pregnant, and right now I am 37 weeks pregnant. So pregnancy has a lot of similarities with recovery, eating disorder recovery, HA recovery. So if pregnancy is your goal, then it's also good to remind yourself that there is so many similarities. So going through that process helps you go through the pregnancy process. And what I I mean is the unknown. So the fact that it is very unknown, and your scans, you're very nervous and you don't know what you're going to be like in the future, what kind of mother you're going to be like, how this is going to look, how that's going to look. And it's the same for HA. You don't know the time scale, you don't know how you're going to end up looking. It's all very unknown, and you've got to be comfortable and trust the process. You also can definitely feel uncomfortable in your body. So feeling uncomfortable in your body during the HA or eating disorder recovery process is very common. And for me, I felt uncomfortable in my body in many different aspects during this whole pregnancy, because your body is changing rapidly and you're not used to seeing it that way. And it's all just a reminiscence of when I went through recovery the first time around. So another one is growing out of your favorite clothes, which can be very annoying. But during the HA or eating disorder recovery process, you are transitioning and you probably won't fit in those clothes. And the same thing with pregnancy. So it just really ramps you up and gets you ready for that process too. And I would also say feeling alone, you've got them aspects as well that are similar. So when you're going through the HA period recovery process, you will probably feel alone, because you look around and think that your friends don't have to deal with that, or your friends can get away with eating this or working out in this way, and you feel really alone and like, the why me? And it can happen when you're pregnant as well, because if you don't know, you don't have that circle of friends that are pregnant, and you're feeling all these different emotions and your hormones changing, you can feel alone too. Next, I just want to go into a little bit about things that I have continued to do after recovering my period, which has then led me to have regular periods and then eventually get pregnant. The first being still honouring that mental and physical hunger. So not relying on the clock to eat and not relying on any apps or anything, truly listening to your body. Reminding myself why periods are important is always really helpful, because if you do kind of go back into old ways, or you see yourself with them red flags that you've got slipping back into old habits, you can just remind yourself why you don't want to be there, why that is unhealthy. I also continued to have decaffeinated beverages and just watching my caffeine intake, because I did notice a knock-on effect with ovulation for me. I continued practices like breathwork, and I was doing them very often, and that really helped with my mental stress and that aspect, which has a knock-on effect with if I ovulated or not that month, because I did notice before, when I've had a high mental stress period of time, then I wouldn't ovulate and I'd had an ovulatory cycle. So really keeping a lid on that and making sure that my self-care and stress management practices were in check. So these are all the things I did to get my period back, to keep my period, and then eventually get pregnant. If you have any questions, then drop them down below. And I would love for you to follow me over on Instagram if you feel like this is the kind of content that you like and you want more of. And I'll see you in the next video. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more, then I would love for you to subscribe and also hit the like button on this video. I would really appreciate it.